All right. Well, thank you very much, Joe. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Go ahead and get this started. So, hi, everyone. My name is Ryan. I'm coming to you from just outside of Chicago in a neighborhood called Skokie, which is right on the border of the city in near Chicago, Illinois. I am the science strategy advisor for LanzaTech. And what LanzaTech does is that we're a gas fermentation company. So we do fermentation with bacteria. And the type of fermentation that we do is we take waste gas emissions, so carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and hydrogen gases primarily. We feed those to bacteria. And the way that we have deployed this is that we partner with other industries. So you can imagine something like a steel mill or a refinery, something that has these waste gas emissions. And those emissions, instead of going and being vented up into the atmosphere, get fed into a reactor that's got bacteria in it, and those bacteria will consume those gases and make other things. We primarily are making from those gases, so from like carbon dioxide, we're making ethanol, which then gets converted into things like plastics and into jet fuels. So we're trying to make this circular kind of carbon economy where instead of always having to dig up fossil fuels for some of the fuels and chemicals that we use in everyday life, we can use it from gases and carbon that's already existing in our atmosphere and being emitted. So we are working with bacteria, which, if you're a part of BioBuilder, you're familiar with bacteria at this point. And we work with them across all sorts of scales. So we do things working with really small cultures when we're doing research, all the way up to the really large fermenters, which the first picture I'll point out is the picture in the top right. So the four kind of tall reactors in like the background, those are commercial reactors at one of our commercial sites. And each one of those reactors is a few hundred or a couple 100,000 liters. So that's where we have our bacteria growing that can then take, in this case, gas emissions from a steel mill and put them to our bacteria and have them make other things. One of the things I like to talk about our bacteria is that you all will probably have an appreciation for what a model organism is. So something like E. coli or yeast. We're working with non-model organisms. So ours are anaerobic, meaning they do not love oxygen. They will in fact die if they are exposed to air. And they consume gas, which is not as common when you're doing research or commercial work. Another fun thing about the bacteria, so in the picture in the bottom left, is that about 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago, our bacteria was first isolated from rabbit poop. So we have a rabbit to thank for the fact that this bacteria was discovered. And we have found ways to develop genetic tools. We've learned how to culture it. So a lot of the things that you're learning how to do in some of your biology experiments and work, we've now learned how to do that, but we have to do it in anaerobic conditions. And so if you look over in the picture on the bottom right, that is me, holding a pipette and doing some cell culturing, but I have to do it in a big anaerobic chamber because if we do it out on the bench, the bacteria will die. And so everything that we do for handling our bacteria has to be done in an anaerobic sense. And then a picture there in the bottom middle is the bacteria growing in one of our smaller reactors. It's about a 100-liter reactor, so still pretty big, but that's still something that we would kind of consider a research scale. But those reactors then have windows in them, so we can actually see that things are growing, which is always nice to see when the bacteria are growing. Um, Joe, I didn't know how you wanted to do this, but if you want to interrupt me and ask questions at any point, please go ahead. Um, Otherwise, I have one other slide to talk about like how I got here, and then we can talk as much or as little as you want.
Yeah, we can just go straight through, and then any of the students, we can save the questions for after you're done, kind of giving your talk, and then we'll kind of go back and forth for a little bit, and that will kind of be it. So,
Okay, perfect.
good to
So
go.
before I transition to my next slide, I guess I should also say like, science strategy advisor are words that we all kind of know. We've heard those words before, but what does that actually mean in terms of what I do? So my job is to manage and lead our research programs and to try to then find partners for us to do research with. We can't do everything ourselves. And so when we want to work with schools or other companies or work with national labs, one that's also my job is to kind of reach out to people who have research and capabilities that are similar to ours and kind of form new research teams and work on ways in which we can learn more about our system or improve it. So, how I got here. So, going back to at least thinking about where I was when I was in high school. So, I grew up in Marietta, Ohio, and Parkersburg, West Virginia. And if you've not heard of those places, that's okay. They're smaller towns. They're about like between like 10 and 15,000 people each, I think. But they're kind of like across the Ohio River, roughly from one another. So I grew up in Marietta, Ohio, and then when it was time for me to go to high school, I actually went to high school across the river in Parkersburg, West Virginia. While I was in high school, I did not really know or care, admittedly, what I want to do when I got older. I just kind of did whatever I needed to do to keep my parents off my back. So that meant getting a job as like working as an assistant doing filing because there weren't as many computer systems and digitized files yet. So I was the computer file system in a doctor's office, worked on a paint crew. I was a hospital cafeteria dishwasher, just kind of doing jobs. And then when it came time to apply to college, I just applied to the school where my grandfather went, who I was close with. I was not really thinking really hard about what I wanted to do or where I went and if it even mattered. So I went to John Carroll University. Um, and over the course of my time at college, I started to figure out that I think I like science and I think I care about the environment. So I'll just start trying to figure that out. And then once I've actually got some internships, so in the bottom left, I had internships while I was in college at the University of Oregon and at the Cleveland Clinic. And these were in two types of science that I don't do right now. I am not a solid state chemist and I'm not a cell biologist, but that's where I learned how to work in a lab. Because I didn't really learn it in high school and I didn't really learn it the first couple of years in college. But that's when I learned how to be in lab, that I liked being in a lab and working with scientists. And so then when I went back from those internships, then I started looking for ways to pursue a science career. Um, and I ended up going to get my PhD at the State University of New York, where they have their environmental science college, where everything that all the research that everyone does there is related to the environment in some way. And then that was part also with Syracuse University. So it's like the kind of like a co-university program that I worked on. And then I found a job from Tech because they happened to be moving to the US because they were coming over from New Zealand where they were founded. And the only condition was that I had to move to Chicago. And I said, sure, we'll try it out. And now, 12 years later, I'm still here. And even though it's a long time to be at one company, I've had 5 different jobs at this company. So it has felt very, very different every couple of years. And one of the things I love giving a plug for is that, while I was very not confident for the majority of my life up until like I was maybe in my mid 20s of what I wanted to do, what I did know about myself and continue to like lean on are the things that I know that are valuable to me. So I really value my family, the environment, my community, and the way that I've gotten sort of like leadership and experience and learned how to like talk to people and work with other people was not really through school. It was through doing my like clubs and activities that I still kind of maintain right now. So the bottom right picture is the ultimate frisbee team that I coach. And have a lot of fun kind of doing that. I used to play, but now I coach. So that's me. Great to see you. And if anyone has any questions about how I got to where I am or want to talk more about Tech and science, I'd love to.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. Any questions from anybody? I know I have a couple. No, we're feeling a little quiet today. I'll start.
Ryan, I have a question. Oh, no, please, please. I'll hold mine. You go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the technology and the stuff that you are working with seems really interesting, and it seems like there's a lot of logistics involved, both with actually capturing that gas from where it's emitted. You mentioned like a steel plant, and then also potentially transporting and culturing that bacteria that can't be exposed to oxygen the whole time. Is that something that you work with? Is the logistics and coordinating that and working with teams to make all of those pieces come together?
Yeah, I work with that kind of like on the research scale. So when we go into lab to want to, if we're looking to genetically engineer our bacteria, test a new strain, that's when it's the most critical to keep oxygen out because the smaller the culture is, the easier it is to kill it if you expose it to oxygen. For our commercial plants, I would say I review the logistics, but I don't participate in actually moving those things around. So, an alternate way that people have kind of come into here is kind of coming from like a chemical engineering background. So people who've worked at other types of plants and either designed or operated those plants come in sometimes with no biology experience because they have to learn, to your point, they have to learn how gas moves. They have to learn how big and where physically these ants and the parts of these plants have to go. So this really is like a pretty big team effort between fermentation scientists, biologists, chemical engineers, and then even people who work in like logistics and shipping. They actually have to know quite a bit of science too, because we can't name all of the bacteria and reactors and things that we do. If we did and they didn't understand it, we'd get nothing done. So even our supply chain people know a little bit of science too.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, it just seems like there's a lot of moving pieces, and everybody kind of needs to be on point. Like even like you said, the logistics people, they need to know how to handle things so that something doesn't get messed up. The people who are running the plant need to know how to set that up so you guys can have the right access points. So yeah, that's very cool and interesting to talk about kind of the interdisciplinary nature of it. Thank you, Natalie. You can go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I had one sort of big picture question and one small detail question. I'll start with the big picture, which is, the photos that you show of Tech and you working in them, that is probably what like people imagine big like bioindustrial fermentation, like that is what people, the glove box with your hands in it and stuff like that. Um, how did you know that you'd be happy doing that kind of science? Because the science, there's a whole gamut of it, right? Like that is pretty big scale science. That's big science, right? At
Yeah.
scale, as opposed to bench level science. So I'm just curious about, you know, whether it was like the vision of what science could be at a big scale that was attractive, or if, that's just where you landed and there you are.
Yeah. So my guiding principle was this was a company that was trying to contribute to mitigating the impacts of climate change. That was really appealing
Mm,
to me. When I applied to work here, I was working for like a polymer engineering group and no real consideration for energy efficiency, pollution, that, this just wasn't part of something that they considered. So what appealed to me about Tech was it just gave me an opportunity to kind of at least move in a direction that was aligned with what I was interested in and what I valued.
yeah,
The scale didn't really matter to me, but when I joined, the big reactors, like in the picture here, those didn't exist. So there was
wow.
really only the small scale to start with. Um,
Hmm.
so now we have work across all of these scales, but when I joined, we had only really worked in kind of like medium-sized reactors. So kind of like this bottom picture in the middle, like reactors that are like 100 liters, maybe a couple hundred
Hmm.
liters. But getting up to the ones that are hundreds of thousands of liters had not happened yet. And since they had a lab that kind of looked like, the bottom right picture is just like, it looks like every lab I've ever been in now. It's just some of the work has to be done in glove boxes. So that at least felt
Yeah,
familiar enough. And at least when I
yeah,
walked in, said, okay, they just
yeah.
have to teach me how to open and close the glove box. And then I mostly know,
Yeah, without
then
killing the
everything
bugs.
else is familiar. And getting used to
Yeah,
pipetting with like really giant astronaut feeling gloves.
giant
That that
astronaut gloves
part's
on.
that part's
Yeah,
tough.
that's so cool. It is amazing that it can go from 100 liters to 100,000 liters in a decade. Like that's very that is it. I mean, a decade probably sounds very long to the folks who are on the call, but that's really amazing engineering and science, because scaling is really hard. It's a whole nother thing. The other question I had was about maybe something that the students do have in mind already and aren't asking, and that's about internships, because I'm presuming they have it in mind because we do get asked a lot about internship opportunities. One of them was in Oregon. So how did that happen? How would you recommend students think about getting internships to get that sort of learning to be a scientist under their belt?
Yeah, so these internships happened for me when I was in college. And
Hmm.
the what I learned in college, again, because like I wasn't really motivated and I also didn't really know how to like pursue things that I liked. Um, I waited until literally the last day of my sophomore year of college to go to a professor in the chemistry department because I liked his class and just said like, "Hey, I don't really have anything to do this summer. Do you need help doing research?" And he kind of yelled at me because he said, "You needed to ask me this like 3 or 4 months ago." Because he said, "Of course I'm
Hmm.
looking for help. Like I would have loved to like come up with something for a project for you." But like, but it's too late. I can't do this now. And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I was like, "All right, lesson learned. I guess I have to like ask for things earlier." But then I was walking down the hallway. He popped his head out and said, "Hold on, would you be willing to like fly somewhere for an internship?" And I was like, "Sure." And one of his friends, like a former colleague who was at the University of Oregon, was starting a brand new program. And since it hadn't finished coming together, he said if I was willing to like wait, there might be a spot for me there. So really just kind of like what I learned was, if you have teachers or professors that you like, kind of tell them that you're interested in their stuff as soon as you think you are, because then you're
Yeah,
on their radar for when they have their own programs or they learn about things, and then they'll potentially reach out to you and help you.
yeah,
Um, so that's how that one kind of came together. And what I've learned, and it's been consistently true over time, is that, if you at least tell people that, like, hey, what I think you're doing is really cool and I'm interested in it, and have like a conversation, even if it's for a couple minutes, goes a long way towards people remembering you. And then when they have programs, whether they have jobs, that that gives you a better chance of knowing that those programs exist when they come around and
yeah,
being able to get into them. Um, and it really is just as simple as like I even like the reason I became a chemistry major was just because like I liked my chemistry teacher in high school. That's why I started that one. I just
yeah,
kind of went with like, well, this teacher was great. Like I really enjoyed them. And then same deal for like how I got these internships. It was me of going to my professors and just saying like, hey, I think what you're doing is really cool and I like
hmm,
your class. Is there a way for me to like explore this more? And those
yeah.
eventually led me to the internships that I got. And there is
So
when I
interesting.
learned from those internships where I could learn from people who already had PhDs and had been career scientists for, a really long time.
Right,
It was really then they could just sort of like give me the feedback of, yes, if you wanted to work in science, you could.
right. Wow. Part of me is heartbroken by what you say because there is so much about luck that is in the path that people who are in science now, all these stories that I hear, so often it's yeah, and the professor, he stuck his head back out into the hallway and said, "Hey, wait a minute, I've got a friend who might be able to," like, but I also, on the other hand, believe it, you can make some luck, right? Like you can start to stir up your own luck by putting, just saying something honest to somebody like, I really think your work is interesting and or I really liked your class, or, you know, I think
Yeah.
this technique is really interesting and I learned a lot or I enjoyed it or something like that. So yeah, I wish there was a
Yeah.
systematic way to get the people to get people into their lanes, but if in since there isn't, and luck is involved, trying to stir up your own luck is a really good piece of advice.
I don't have a system for generating luck, but I can at least be honest right now and tell you there are several times on here that I don't have slides for where I was unlucky.
Yes.
Even trying to get in when I decided I wanted to go to graduate school, the first few places I reached out to all said no. That took a while and was a lot harder than
Hmm.
I thought. And when I went initially to visit the State University of New York, where I ended up going, at first I hated it, and I just didn't think
Oh,
it was going to be a good fit. And I thought maybe this whole process was a mistake. Um, but then I ended up meeting again, met one professor who I actually had a really good interview with, and then we kind of started figuring out like, okay, we think we would work well together. Um,
mhm.
but the places I
Yeah, sure.
thought I should go to and really wanted to go to at first, they all said no.
Wow.
So like
Yeah.
there are
Yeah.
certainly times I've been unlucky, but
Discouraged. Sure. Yeah.
yeah,
Or, it was just waiting for the right opportunity to come along, right? Like sometimes
yeah,
I think that things, when something is a no, it's because there's a yes coming down the pike. And if you had said yes to the earlier thing, you couldn't say yes to the later thing. So, I mean, I'm not all these things happen for a reason kind of a person, but I do believe that, you can't say yes to everything. And so, being able to find the right opportunity, sometimes that means a no along the way to get to the right place. So so interesting. Yeah. So I do hope the students take this to heart, that it is worth asking. It's worth, connecting to people. It is often about just personal connections that you make along the way that really can change trajectories. So yeah.
yeah. And it took me a long time to also appreciate that sometimes people won't be able to help you until much later.
Right.
But they
Right.
won't know
Yeah.
that you're someone looking for help or interested in
Yeah.
something if you never say something to begin with. The
Yeah.
Oregon story is funny because that literally happened so quick, but every other story of
Right.
me, like me having a job at Lancet, I interviewed with them twice over a couple of years before they finally had a job available for me. So like they were
That
just,
was the right job.
it took a while, but I knew that
Yeah.
this was something I was interested in, so I kept checking. But
Kept at it.
it took a while
That's
before I got it.
Yep. Well, I admire your resilience and your perseverance. It's definitely how it's a big component to getting ahead and getting where you want to be is to just keep at it, right? Yeah. That's so awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I feel like if there's anything for the students to take away, I know what you mean, Natalie, where it can be kind of a little bit discouraging to be like, well, sometimes it's just chance, but it's kind of like throwing darts at a board. Eventually you're going to hit something, but you just have to keep shooting and see what happens. And if there's anything that I think you guys should take away from not just this, but a bunch of our career talks is the importance of reaching out to people, of making these connections. Obviously, you guys are already in this program, so you have the initiative to kind of seek out opportunities and don't be afraid to embarrass yourself. Don't be afraid that somebody's going to, not take you seriously or something. Just being interested and showing that you're interested is enough to kind of put you on somebody's radar. And people are so much more willing to help you than you might expect. People are very generous with their time. If people are really into it when you're interested in what they're doing, like you said, Ryan, just going to a professor and saying, "Hey, I think what you're doing is really cool." That gets you a long way, especially just being sincere about it and saying, "Hey, I just think that this is cool and I want to learn more about it." That can open up doors that you don't even expect. So yeah, that was really awesome. Any questions from the students? I know it's a nice day. Maybe we're all a little bit tired or distracted. It's springtime, but I appreciate you guys giving your attention at least. Any last minute questions before we wrap things up and move on to class?
Ryan, I have a question, and I don't want to interrupt the students because I would love for a student to ask a question, but do you hire people? And if you are hiring, what do you look for when you hire?
Sure. When we're hiring and just over time it's just kind of like it comes and goes in spurts. Since we're not a huge company, we've probably got have about 250 people globally. So it's not monstrous, but it's also not teeny tiny. Uh, when we hire, we are always at least looking for someone with a college degree. So there are, I have a PhD. You don't need to have a PhD to work here. We have people who found lots of different paths, either having a bachelor's or having a bachelor's and then switching fields and making their way into this. We do offer internships to college students. The blessing and the curse of being in Chicago is that we have several universities around Chicago, so we usually just grab local students, since that's helpful. But like I'm a mentor for a BioBuilder team. I have a couple of other colleagues who are mentors for BioBuilder teams. And I know several of my colleagues also do mentorship for students, whether they're grad students, college students, high school students. We don't have a formal program for it, but I can tell you, since I've worked here for so long, that almost every single scientist here loves talking to people who are motivated and trying to like figure out their own path. Like it's almost like a nice, wonderful support system for people who are interested in science. So, though we don't, you can't go to our website right now and click on something and be like, oh, here's a job or an apprentice or an internship that I can apply to. But if you have my name written down and like look me up on LinkedIn or like, our emails are our first dot last name at lancetech.com. So it's kind of easy to email us too. But if you reach out to me, like I'll respond. And if you're just kind of looking for, feedback or being put in contact with someone who's more kind of has interests in, in what you're looking for, we'll certainly talk to you. And I know that's true for lots of scientists at lots of different places.
Awesome. Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you so much. For any of the students, do you mind if we give them your email to reach out?
Sure, absolutely. Please do.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'll send out an email after this to let you guys know. But yeah, feel free to reach out to Ryan, any of our career speakers, if you guys are looking for opportunities or just to even just learn more about any of this stuff. Particularly this company, it's kind of awesome with the environmental impact, the carbon capture, all that stuff. So if you guys are interested in more of that kind of thing, please don't be shy. Feel free to reach out to Ryan. And unless you guys have any questions.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Um, so when you started out at the company, what was your initial job, and then how long did it take to get to your like senior position?
Yeah, so starting out, it was this. So I was my title is literally scientist. So you put on the lab coat, you go into lab, and you when I first started, I had a manager who kind of like gave me either every day or like every week, like these are the experiments that we need to run, these are the protocols. So you kind of go in and execute them. And then once I kind of learned how to do our anaerobic protocols and got more comfortable with that, then I got opportunities to start like leading parts of projects or whole projects and then eventually teams. So it took me from scientist to manager a little less than 5 years, is about 5 years. Um, and even for us, being a manager, I was still going into lab, but then I was also kind of responsible for telling a few other people what they needed to do when they walked into lab with me. So I would say the first like 9 of my 12 years here were all lab based. But it kind of grew. And then the job I have now, where I'm like managing research programs and then also kind of like working with people who aren't Lanza Tech employees, has been a little over 2 years. And that is, as we like to joke, since I'm one of the scientists at Lanza Tech who likes talking to people, they wanted me to have this role. But yeah, so it took about 5 years. And that's a whole separate thing that is a really interesting discussion too. I don't know if you all get into this. It's like how to figure out what type of leadership role you want or how to advance at a company or a career. But if you ever get a chance to talk to industry scientists, we've all kind of navigated that space, and it's hard, but not because you're not deserving, because it's hard to like figure out how to get promotions, but you can do it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sam. To kind of follow up on that a little bit, do you feel like it was more of like your manager starting out that gave you some of those opportunities and helped you to advance, or was it just kind of the company culture that it was easier to make those different moves, or both?
Yeah, if you're at a smaller company that starts to grow, there are lots of opportunities to get promotions or switch. Like if you want to work for a different team, like if you're a scientist and want to work on like the engineering team, if you want to switch across scales here, like those opportunities, a lot of those happened as we started to grow and commercialize. And so if you're thinking about working for a company, the really appealing part of working for like smaller companies and startups is that if they start to succeed, there's tons of opportunities to try out leadership, try new roles. Um, working for larger companies, those opportunities exist, but it can be sometimes harder. It's not as clear to navigate them. Um, yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I definitely know what you mean. There's there's friends, people who I know that work in the biotech field that work at really small places, and it can be really hectic sometimes when it's very early on. But then if they grow, you can kind of have the opportunity to grow with them. So that's really cool seeing you kind of stay with the company for that. amount of time, and then kind of be able to grow alongside them. Awesome.
Yeah. And, you know, I got, oh, I should also acknowledge that, you know, the manager and the person that hired me here was really nice to me, and when there were opportunities let me know when they existed, even though I would didn't end up being a fit for all of them or get everything that I tried to get. He was great in letting me know when those opportunities presented themselves. So uh yeah, it helps, it can help a lot to have a manager who is looking out for their employees, and I definitely feel like I had that in my early days here, and now still. It's just now that that relationship is different because now I'm expected to do a lot more on my own because I've been here for so long.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's definitely good to have somebody kind of in your corner willing to advocate for you and give you those opportunities. So that's really great to hear. All right. Any other questions from the students?
Hi, I also have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there, was leadership something you've always wanted to do, or if not, did anything help you decide that it was?
Um, I did want to be in a leadership position. I didn't know what that meant though, and that's actually something I had to ask while I was here, because I going through grad school, I learned how to like run my own project, do a lot of my own work, everything from like design to execution and reporting. Like I had to do all of that. And when I was first working here, I wasn't doing that. So I just sort of had to start asking the question of, hey, I know I can do all of these things. Do I have to be a manager to do those things? Do I have to like, is there a certain title or a certain level? And it turns out that answer was yes. So that helped me kind of understand that I wanted to kind of be in charge of my like day to day, week to week work, and also kind of like help or to have other people who report to me. I needed to have the manager role here. Um, but I knew that I liked doing it, was comfortable doing it because I liked when I was a mentor and a coach while in grad school and first started working here, like coaching club sports teams and having internships at all of my jobs. I've had internships, whether they're high school or undergrad. And so I knew I liked doing that. So I thought I would be a good manager. And my team tells me that I'm a good manager, but you know, hopefully that's true and they're not lying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great question. Thank you. All right. Anybody else got anything? No? Thank you guys so much for your questions. That's awesome. Unless there is anything else that anybody wants to ask or share, I think that we can wrap up for today. Thank you so much, Ryan, for your time. It was really great to hear about your work and your path to get there. We appreciate you taking the time to talk to the students, and thank you to the students for having some good questions today.
Yeah, Joe, thank you so much. Thanks for the invitation and thank you all for listening. And if you ever want to reach out and ask more questions, they don't have to be super big, smart, profound questions. If you just ever want to reach out to somebody, please feel free.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, students, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Don't be shy. All right. Thank you so much, and have a good one.
All right. Thank you so much. Take care.
All right. All right, guys. Thanks for the questions. That was a really good talk today. I appreciate it. So let me just stop the recording.